Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, this is going to be a really important show that you may want to take notes on or even watch a couple of times, because we're going to be talking to you about how you can alleviate asthma, um, allergies, and all kinds of immune problems by addressing what's going on in your home. Our guest today is Lee Freeman. Lee Freeman is a certified licensed air quality specialist. His company is Too Fresh Air Quality, and you can find out more about him and his wonderful work at toofreshaq.com. Welcome, Lee Freeman.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing, Ms. Jack?
I'm great. Now, Lee Freeman, as a medical intuitive healer, I often find that a lot of my clients' health problems originate actually in their home. Where does bacteria and mold come from?
Basically, mold and bacteria just comes and it builds up over time. A lot of people is not educated as far as your air quality in your house. Just as far as just doing basic maintenance on your equipment, keeping it up to date, changing the filter, and over time, that stuff builds up inside the system and it doesn't get maintenance, bacteria, and that causes the build mold inside your unit, and that circulates throughout your air inside your home. And that definitely can be dangerous if not treated well and properly.
Yeah, so we know that bad bacteria and viruses are a cause of many chronic immune problems that people have. And symptoms of mold exposure can include nasal and sinus congestion, runny nose, respiratory problems such as wheezing and difficulty breathing or chest tightness, cough, throat irritation, and sneezing and sneezing fits. So this is a lot of people. So Lee Freeman, how did you actually get interested in this work?
It all started off going to school for heating and air, and I took a real interest in the air quality because I noticed how important it was, especially with family members with asthmatic problems, respiratory problems. I became aware that this is real important and people need to be educated on this. I could have went any different way in the HVAC field, but I chose air quality because it really interests me, and I love helping out people.
Yes, that we have in common. Now, Lee Freeman, what exactly is air quality?
Air quality is the quality of air that's inside your house and what you breathe in every day. You know how you hear people all the time say, I would like to go outside for a breath of fresh air, because your house can be real polluted. Like I said, once again, if it's not treated right and your air quality is not taken care of or even tested. So air quality is just the airflow that's inside your house and what you're breathing in every day. When you go to sleep, when you walk inside the house, and the whole time your air is just constantly running inside your house. It never shuts off.
Now, I remember when I was a little girl, my grandfather was a scientist. He actually worked for DuPont for over 50 years.
Okay.
And my grandfather and I did scientific experiments. And one of the things that I learned from my grandfather, which is true, is that indoor air pollution is actually worse than outdoor air pollution.
Way worse. Way worse.
Right. And many people are not aware of that. And, we talk about, automobile fumes and living in your factories, but few of us think about, the air quality in our home. So Lee Freeman, you're an air quality specialist. Why is indoor air pollution worse than outdoor air pollution?
Because every time, people don't understand, when you spray chemicals inside your house, you open up the door inside your house, your return vents are constantly pulling this stuff in, and it's just recycling in and out your air system, in and out your air quality. So it's constantly just running. So the best way to go about this is, definitely keeping up with your maintenance, changing the filter inside the system, and also getting it checked out, because over time this stuff builds up inside your unit, and you're breathing it in every day, from pet dander to the skin, anything. It's always in the air. Your air is always working, and that's why it can be way worse outside than it is inside the house, because the trees naturally purify the air outside. But if you don't have no type of air purification system inside your home, the air can always be bad, especially if you don't treat it within months, years, and over time it can get worse.
And I think I remember reading that something like 80 to 90% of dust is actually human skin.
Yes. When you scratch yourself, you scratch your hair, it's going inside your body. It has to go somewhere. And the same thing with animals. Animals, they shed a whole lot worse, so it can be a whole lot worse. If you have animals inside your home, your house can be even polluted even more, even worse.
And why is it so important for us to have good air quality in our homes? How does that affect our health, and how is it good for us?
It affects a lot of things, because the people with bad air quality have constant headaches, can't breathe, constant sneezing, allergies, asthma, and people don't know they can be slowly but surely just getting sick inside their house, possibly to the point where you live in there so long, it can cause real serious health issues, and people don't know about it. Because you gotta understand, your breathing is important. Even when you go to sleep, you're breathing this stuff in. If it's not, and you're in your house, more than likely, most of the time throughout the day, you sleep there for a few hours, you're there in the morning, you dinner. So you're in your house constantly, and you're breathing this air in. And over time and over years, if you're breathing that stuff in, of course, it's going to mess up your health and any issues later on in the future. So it's really important that people stay on top of your air quality and be educated the proper way on it and how to go about it and fix it and prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, I can remember one time in the past year, a lady called me for a medical intuitive reading about her son who'd been sick since the day he was born. Well, I tuned in and I got the problem was his home, and that they basically had a horrific mold problem, and she admitted that they had. What I saw was there was some sort of underground stream in their basement. And, a lot of times we have leaking water or old foundations. Old houses often have old foundations where water can leak in, and then there's just chronic mold overgrowth. And the young man had been, living in the house his whole life, whereas the parents had lived elsewhere. And I said, your child actually needs to move out of the house in order to get well. And, it was affecting everybody. Now, can you give it some examples from the clients that you work with, Lee Freeman, people that you've seen who have health problems that were being affected by their air quality?
Yes. Most of the time, for most of the clients that I deal with, it's kind of, they give us a call after they get sick. Because most of the clients I get there, because I have one example. I had a lady, her husband actually had to go to the hospital overnight in a rush because he had a heart attack and he couldn't breathe well. And they had no idea what it was. And, a week after he was in the hospital, he gave us a call, and I was there. And what I expected, when I got to the ducts in an HVAC system, I did a full diagnostics to see what was going on. And the system was full of mold, and they've been breathing this. It's been building up for 10 plus years inside their system, and they had no idea what was wrong. So the gentleman was having to be breathing in mold the whole time, and that caused him to go to the hospital and be rushed by ambulance to actually get to the hospital because of his breathing problem. And once we got there, once I did my diagnostics, we went and treated it. And we got a call. I followed up about 2 weeks later to see how everything was in the house. And they said it's been better than ever. She happened to cry and everything. They were so happy to realize we solved the problem. And they also had pets inside their home. So that didn't make it even better, because they had, I want to say, 3 dogs and about 4 cats. So that, that could really pollute the air inside their home. But they wasn't educated on it, and they didn't know. So we went about it the proper way, fixed the problem, and got rid of the mold. And we put in an air purification system, which prevents mold from growing again. So they won't never have that problem again, and it keeps that air in their house purified. So the gentleman will never have this issue again. And this is common in the everyday home.
Yeah, and that's a pretty profound story where somebody, was basically having a heart attack. What about people with sleep apnea who are having difficulty breathing at night? How does the air quality affect their ability to breathe properly when they're sleeping?
They're congested because of the air. The air can be thick, definitely can be really polluted, and that causes people to snore, have breathing problems, headaches, and even going to sleep. That could be a real issue because I said that causes headaches and people cannot get comfortable because of the air inside their home. And once the air quality is fixed and changed, that everything, all that goes away. Because people don't know and they're not sure what it is. They might think of something that they ate. It might be too hot inside the house, but like I said, a lot of people are not educated on the air quality. So this is becoming a real issue and a real problem in the everyday home. Because every house that I go to, for the most part, 80% of the houses I go to, never had their dust cleaned. So this is real common with people. So a lot of people are getting sick and they have no idea what this is. People think it's outside, it's allergy, but it's actually inside your house that's what's causing the problem. That's where you fix it first. You start in the home, and if it's anything worse, you take other routes. But the home, you have to start there first with air quality.
Yeah, and I think, Lee Freeman, the work that you're doing with Too Fresh Air Quality is so crucial because our environment is the most powerful factor. Now, if you were a plant, you would understand, or if you were raising plants, if you were a gardener, you would understand you've got to have the right soil and you've got to have the right sunshine and you've got to have the right water.
I had the right ingredients, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And yet when we have allergies or asthma or immune problems or, breathing difficulties, then we go to the doctor and we take drugs, and nobody's sitting there thinking, what's going on with the air quality in our home?
Yeah, and that's the source. And you can avoid all the medication and the doctor visits and all the extra stuff when you can just start, like you said, it's the base of your home. It starts in your home. Once you fix that, that can eliminate a whole lot of problems. I think we need to start there before we go to the hospitals and the doctors to see what's wrong with our respiratory problems. We need to start in the home first. We need to test your air quality, see how you're living and how you're breathing, because that's real crucial right now.
Yeah, and probably the most profound story from my own practice, and I had mentioned it on another radio show, years ago, I worked with a young man who'd been sick since the day he was born. And it was the story how he came to me. One day he was sick. He'd been everywhere, to every doctor. He wasn't able to go to school. He'd been to shamans and all kinds of people. And anyway, the story is, one day he was standing in his front yard and he said a prayer and he just said, "Dear God, please help me." And he was holding his phone. He said this prayer, "Dear God, please help me." And the phone rang, and it happened to be a feng shui master who his mother had called. So he talked to this feng shui master. She listened to him, and she just said, "You need to call Catherine Carrigan." So his mother and him come to me for an appointment in person, and they're sitting in my office. And I said to them, I actually need to go to your home. And I don't usually go to people's homes, but I just knew I needed to go to their home. And I told them on the first visit, I said, "You have terrible mold." Well, I went to their home. It was like a toxic waste dump. And I found some mold specialists to go and look at their home. And the mold specialist said the mold was so bad they were lucky to be alive. They had black mold in their home. And what had happened was, years ago, their house had caught on fire. So the fire department came, put the fire out. Yay, that's important. But then there was no mold remediation after a fire. And so that's something that people need to think about. If you had a fire someplace, any place in your house, and they spray it with water, well, you're going to have to, get rid of the mold afterwards. Another example from my practice, I had a lady, she was actually an interior decorator.
Okay.
And she was having chronic itchiness in her eyes, and her ophthalmologist couldn't help her. And I said to her, "You have mold in your home." I said, "I'm sure your home is absolutely beautiful, but if you have mold in your home, your house can be beautiful and look great, but it's still affecting your health."
It's still affecting your health at the end of the day. That's what's more important.
Now, so Lee Freeman, what are the environmental conditions that in our homes that cause mold to grow?
Basically, just it takes over time because mold doesn't grow overnight because it contains a food, hair. Like I said, when we scratch ourselves, our skin, all that stuff is bacteria. And that stuff just grows and cakes up inside the system over years and years and years. If you don't get your ducts clean. Because how your system works is you have vents that pull air and you have vents that push air out. And all it does is just recycle the same air. And over time, all that stuff that you sprayed, you scratch yourself, all them chemicals that you put inside the air, is just building up inside your unit. And your unit is a dark and moist area. So it's easy for mold and condensation to build up and get wet inside your unit. And that's how mold just builds up. And as it builds up, it circulates throughout the air. Even though you can't see it sometimes, that doesn't mean it's not in the air because mold, for the most part, is airborne. But the longer it sits, the worse it gets and the more you can see. Because if you can see it on your unit and your vents, it's definitely cycling throughout your house right now. And signs that is looking at the vents. When you start to see black spores and black spots, those are common signs of mold inside your house.
Now, one of the things that's true, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control says that anytime you have humidity over 50%, you're going to have mold. Yes. And a real common mistake that people make in their homes is they purchase humidifiers where they're so to explain for everybody, once you realize that when your humidity is over 50%, you're going to get mold. Why is it a big mistake to get a humidifier?
Because people think that takes air outside the home. Where I say all the time, the air begins with inside the system. So you have to eliminate that problem with inside the system. And the perfect way to go about that is an air purification system, because that was guaranteed to keep the air from getting moist and wet and prevent mold from building up, because that's all it is. You need to keep your system dry. And the UV light, that's what that does. It keeps your system dry. It sits on top of your coils, and that's what heats and cools your air. And once the UV light sits on top of there, it keeps the air dry, prevents bacteria from growing inside the system. And you have an air filter that's supposed to catch all this bacteria from recycling inside your house. But because most filters have a paper material, that bacteria goes right through it. And what the UV light does is, whatever goes past the filter, the UV light catches it and it eliminates it before it diffuses back inside the house. And that's how you keep the air in your house dry and the air quality good.
Right. And one of the things that I am always recommending to my clients, if you go to Amazon.com, you can buy an AccuRite indoor air humidity monitor for less than $10. They're about $10. And these things are portable, and you can go from room to room to check the humidity in your home. And if you've got humidity any place in your home over 50%, you will have mold, and you're going to need to do something about it. And now, Lee Freeman, how can people know whether or not their air ducts are dirty?
The biggest sign is just taking a look, something as simple as that. Just taking a look at your vents. You can look at your vents. If you see dust, you see anything coming outside the vents. If your house is starting to get dusty, you have a certain type of smell or type of musk inside your house, those are real heavy and common signs that let you know that your ducts are clean. Or just ask yourself, have you ever cleaned your ducts before? Have anybody ever came here and cleaned my vents? Ask yourself that. If it's been 10, 15 plus years, it's definitely time to get that done. You might not be able to feel it now, but it can affect your health in the future if you don't get this taken care of as soon as possible.
Yeah, I remember the first time I had my air ducts cleaned. The technicians who came, and my house is 70 years old, the technicians told me, they say, "We don't think you've ever had your air ducts cleaned." So I remember really noticing after I had my air ducts cleaned what a big difference it made. Now, how often should people have their air ducts cleaned?
Well, I say the common time to get your air ducts cleaned is once every 6 years. So it's nothing that you have to do consistently, but at least I say the minimum at least once every 6 years. And if you have something, if you get your filter changed frequently, your coils changed frequently, or even have an air purification system inside your unit, you don't have to do it as often. But you definitely, I say no less than 6 to 7 years as getting it clean. Because like I said, Ms. Catherine, over time, this stuff just builds up. It takes years for dust and things to build up inside the unit. So once every 6 years, I say it's common.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a funny story. I remember I told you the story about the client who had, the worst case of mold the mold experts had ever seen.
Yes.
And after I helped that client, I thought, I need to have the mold experts come to my house. And I'll never forget, this is a funny story. I was walking around with the mold experts because I thought, okay, I'm going to learn something here. And we opened up the inside of my heating and air unit, and there was a dead rat inside the heating and air unit. It was so awful. And what was happening was the air was going through the air filter over the dead rat into my home.
Oh, yeah. That's not good at all.
I was just like, oh my God. And so, there are these things that are going on inside of your house, and we need to look, we need to get good technicians, and, you need to have people that you can trust to go in there and look to see what's actually happening.
Exactly.
Now, Lee Freeman, what are signs of bad air ducts? If people are, walking around the house, if you open your heating and air duct and you saw a dead rat, that would probably be pretty obvious.
It's a huge sign. You don't need no dead animals. And like I said, the real common sign of bad air quality is the smell inside your house, and also just looking at the actual ducts. Because it don't take nothing to get a flashlight to shine inside your air duct just to see what's going on. If you see dust, debris, anything of those type of nature, you need to go ahead and get it checked. Because it's not really hard. People just don't know about it. People walk past the events every day, don't think twice to look at it or even think that's important, because people don't know about it. And that's the real problem, Catherine. People not educated on air ducts and air quality. People don't even know what air ducts are. So I think that's where it starts, at people knowing what that is and just looking at your vents. Because if you never got it done, you need it done.
Right. Now, what exactly are air ducts? Because, most people are like me, we're not air quality specialists.
Yes.
Air duct in a house.
Air duct is actually the vents. You have vents inside your home. And the air ducts is what's connected to the vents that go back to your unit. So that's all they are. That's where the air is coming from. You have larger vents inside your house, which are called return vents. Those pull the air. Then you have the smaller vents where you can open and close, or those are called your supply vents. That's the air that you're breathing in, and that's getting pushed back inside the home. So ducts are nothing but flex material that pushes air through the system and pushes it out through the other side, the opposite side. And that's where the dust and the debris just sits and lies at if it's not clean or even treated. And over time, and that's where we go back to the mold getting built back up inside the system, because it affects your air quality and your air efficiency too. Because if your air is not coming out as strong as it should be, it might be clogged up, full of debris and dust. And that's what your air ducts are. That's where the air travels through your air ducts.
Now, studies have shown that people who are atopic, which basically means sensitive, already suffer from allergies, asthma, or compromised immune systems, and occupy damp or moldy buildings. These people are at increased risk of health problems, such as inflammatory and toxic responses to mold spores, metabolites, and other components. So the most common health problem that people have when they have, poor air quality indoors is allergies. Other problems are respiratory and or immune system responses, including respiratory systems, respiratory infections, asthma, pneumonia, chronic rhinosinusitis. So basically, if your nose is dripping, you're always sneezing, and allergic fungal sinusitis. So a lot of people don't realize that if you're sneezing all the time, according to the Mayo Clinic, you have mold in your nose. And
That's not good at all.
it's not good at all. And this reaction to mold affects the liver big time because you're breathing in toxic air, and you can have severe reactions. A person's reaction to mold depends on their sensitivity and other health conditions, the amount of mold present, the length of time, how much time they're spending exposed to the mold, and the type of mold or mold products. So now here's an important question: vacuuming. And it's so funny because I never used to be good at house cleaning until I started practicing natural healing. And now I'm much more on top of my home and trying to keep things clean. But in your professional opinion, Lee Freeman, air quality specialist, how often should we vacuum our house?
I think you should vacuum your house frequently, at least 2 to 3 times a week. And getting your carpets clean is very important too, because that dust and stuff can sit inside your carpet, and you need to get that out of there too, because that can cause a smell that can go back inside the system and just keep recycling in and out your air dust. So getting your actual carpets clean is really important. Most people do that, then they get their air dust. They get their carpets clean, then get their air dust clean afterwards.
So 2 or 3 times a week to vacuum the whole house.
Yeah, I would say 2 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how your activity looks inside the house. Because you could have kids, you could have pets that shed on a regular. It just depends on your situation. If you don't really have too much activity and anything going on inside your house, maybe once a week. But just keeping the maintenance up inside your home also is really important too. And watch what kind of chemicals you spray inside your house, because that can really pollute the air. Because you got to understand you're breathing that in too. Even though when you spray the bleach to clean your tub, that's going right inside your vents. And that's just building up. It's building up everything that you clean. So that's real important. Depends on the activity that you've got going on inside the house. The more maintenance you have to do.
That's really good. And I remember a couple of years ago, I had an old rug cleaned. Now, this is a rug that I had inherited from my mother, and my mother inherited it from my grandmother. And I remember when I had the rug cleaned, the rug cleaner told me that the rug pad was made from a toxic material that is no longer even legal. And I remember, and this old rug was in my bedroom, and I remember I used to sneeze a lot. Well, it was the old rug that the rug pad was deteriorating, and it hadn't been cleaned. It was a very old rug. So again, you want to stop. If you are having these health problems, you want to stop and ask yourself, what can I do to clean my house? Can I vacuum more frequently? Can I get my carpets cleaned? Can I hire somebody like Lee Freeman to come out and clean my ducts? Now, you mentioned bleach, because a real common mistake is people will see that black mold growing and bring out their bleach, which, as you know, makes mold grow faster. So why is bleach a real no-no when you're trying to clean up mold?
Because you're breathing it in. Anything that you put inside your system, you're breathing it in. I always suggest to my clients, do never put bleach inside your unit. And people, the first thing they think of when they hear mold, well, I could just put bleach in there and then get rid of it. But no, you definitely do not want to do that. Because anything you put inside the system, any type of chemical, you have to be real cautious about it, because it's going to go right back inside the house. So we try to use organic solutions, green solutions to go ahead and get rid of this, because we avoid using chemicals to kill mold. That's why we use UV lights, because that's the safest. Because you can have a baby inside the house, and if the mold, if you spray bleach inside of there, they're going to breathe that in, and they're going to automatically get sick. So that's definitely a no of putting bleach inside the unit.
Yeah, and my understanding is that bleach actually causes mold to multiply. So
yeah, it will aggravate it, and it will increase it too, because you just added more moisture inside the system. That's all you're doing, and people don't know that.
Yes. Now, and you mentioned young children, because young children are even more sensitive to poor air quality because their lungs and bodies are smaller. So
Yeah.
again, if you have a young child with health problems, and I've even seen things as extreme as cancer related to the child's home environment. And infants may develop respiratory symptoms as a result of exposure to a specific type of fungal mold called penicillin. Signs that an infant may have mold-related respiratory problems include, but are not limited to, a persistent cough and or wheeze. Increased exposure increases the probability of developing respiratory symptoms during their first year of life. So again, if you've got little babies in your house, you really want to keep the air quality clean. And studies have shown that a correlation exists between the probability of developing asthma and increased exposure to penicillin. When I was younger, I actually had asthma. And the funny thing is that I can remember growing up and being a little girl and my mother taking me to an allergy doctor. And, you know, at one point in my life, I took allergy shots and so on, but nobody was sitting there saying, well, how's her home? What's going on in her home? Is there mold in their home? Is the air quality clean? So again, the little children, you want to be even more protective of.
Yeah, because they're just developing their immune system. So there's going to be a whole lot weaker than ours.
Yes.
But,
So,
no, sorry, go.
So basically, for our audience listening in, we know that we need to vacuum 2 or 3 times a week. That's news to me. Usually I vacuum about once a week, but obviously we could all step it up a little bit.
Yeah.
We need to get our air ducts cleaned at least every 6 years, right? Yeah. And we can get an indoor humidity monitor to check for high levels of humidity. Now, if you do have high levels of humidity in your home environment, what do you recommend that people do to bring the humidity level down?
Air purification system, and it depends where your unit at, because if you have, people might have a unit, because right now we're based out of Georgia, and most homes have units underneath the house inside their crawl space. So it's a whole lot of humidity and a whole lot of moisture down there, and it could be the same thing when you're at it. So you have to watch out for those temperatures. So like I said before, just to keep your unit dry, the best thing to do is just install an air purification system and put a UV light unit inside of there to prevent that from happening. And it depends where your unit is, because like I said, it all depends on the temperature. Because if it's underneath the house, it's going to get real cold, it's going to get real moist, and it's real dark down there. So you have to keep it dry, and that's the best way to do it. You start with inside the unit, because you could put a humidifier down in the actual crawl space, but it won't actually fix the whole problem inside the actual house. So you need to start with inside the unit, and that's when you put the air purification system and the UV lights.
Okay, great advice. And I know myself, I have a whole house dehumidifier. And it's very interesting because I monitor the humidity level in my home on a regular basis. I have little devices around my house that I can just look at and check the humidity. And again, if you're living in the American South, you can be guaranteed that on a daily basis, the humidity outside is going to be over 50%.
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
Yes.
So when the houses that you inspect, Lee Freeman, what percent of the houses that you come and look at do you estimate have problems with mold?
Anywhere between 85 to 90% of the houses I go to. And 90% of the houses I go to, this is their first time getting it done. And they normally they wait until they get sick or something happens, something major happens inside the home, and their doctors actually recommend getting their air ducts cleaned. And that's why they call us. You know, some people, they keep up with it, you know, every few years they give us a call, but for the most part, my new clients, this be their first time getting it done. And I'll say it's about 85 to 90% of my clients, this is the first time they're getting it done.
Yeah. And, here's another story from my personal practice. I had a new client about a year ago. He had terrible immune problems to the point where he would actually have to leave Georgia for a significant part of the year. And he traveled for work. So he would literally schedule his work to be out of town when his allergy symptoms were worse. So he worked with me, and we did a number of natural healing remedies to boost his immune system. And he was also simultaneously getting a divorce, so he wasn't living in his house. But after finalizing his divorce, then he worked on cleaning up the house and getting rid of the mold and cleaning the air ducts and all that. So you can start with you, and you're really important to build up your own immune system. But if you're living in a moldy home with poor air quality, then you're going to need to take natural healing remedies for your immune system on an ongoing basis. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that shouldn't even be necessary, but yeah.
Yeah. And what are some signs? So you mentioned if you walk into a house and it smells bad, that's a sign of poor air quality.
I mean, I understand with some people, like, their situations is different because you could have pets inside your home. And you definitely, and that's real important that you keep your air quality check. You got some people who smoke inside their home too, and they can't get the smoke smell out. They can't get the pet smell out. That's just a sign of your bad air quality. And also just looking outside the vents. If you go to restaurants, you can just take a look at the vents. Just look up top, and you can see that most of them, sometimes they could be black, it could be sticky, it could be brown, and that could be a whole sign. Even with restaurants and other commercial buildings in your home, it's not real hard to really check the air quality. You can do certain type of tests to check how bad it is, but you can also just look at the vents and know if they need to be cleaned or not, if they ever get cleaned. Because I go to restaurants and commercial buildings all the time, and it's second nature to me just to look at a vent when I go inside there, and if I see that it's not clean or it's dusty, dirty, it kind of turns me off, and I don't really want to eat. I don't really have to pull out no test or go check the unit. I can actually just look at the vents and see that it's dust that's dropping and just hanging from there. They let me know, hey, the air quality in here is terrible. It hasn't been cleaned in years, and it's just that's a bad sign right there. And I know once I go to the unit and do my diagnostics, it's going to tell me a whole lot right then and there.
Now, we've been talking about home environments, and that's so important because, for example, your bedroom, most people are going to spend 8 to 10 hours every day in your bedroom.
Yes.
But
yes.
There's also our workspace. So, and many people are working in toxic buildings. So what are some signs that your workplace is toxic?
If people is getting sick, sneezing, coughing, if people have allergy problems, have to go outside, and you just need to ask even the manager or supervisor, the owner, how's the air quality in here? I'm real sensitive, and just check when the last time the duct's been cleaned. And like I said, it's not too hard to look because the commercial vents are actually larger than the ones inside your home. Just to take a look, a quick glance, and just see if you see any dust, any debris, anything hanging, and that's just a huge sign of it never being clean. And like I said, if people coughing and sneezing, that stuff is going in the air and it's just recycling in and out. So if somebody's sick, that's why they say if you're sick, stay home, because that stuff can circulate throughout the air. But just because you were sick for a couple of days and you never got your air quality clean, that stuff is still inside of you. You got hundreds and a lot of people just coughing and sick. And that's why it's important even in daycares too, and schools to be checked, and retirement homes also. That's a lot of where a lot of my work is, in retirement homes and school, because older people in the younger generation, their immune systems are not as strong as ours. So that's really important to even go ahead and look at that.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about finding a retirement home for your parents, and one of the things that you would want to ask is, how's the air quality? How often do you get your air vents cleaned?
Yes,
right?
and how often is your system maintenance? How often is the filter getting changed? How often is the coils getting cleaned? So just little things like that. If you don't avoid that, you can keep your air quality great inside there. People need to know that, especially in retirement homes. You need to ask those type of questions, because those are very important.
And in our daycare centers, same questions.
Exactly. You had to get tested. I know parents ask a whole lot of questions. Even me, before I sign my kids up for a certain daycare, you want to know certain things. What's going on in here? Is everything getting taken care of? And how's the air quality? Because kids get sick too. So how often is your dust getting clean? How often is your system getting maintenance? Because I know that's real important when it comes as far as air quality goes in my kids. So don't be scared to ask those type of questions. And don't even hesitate, because it's important. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So you need to ask people that. You need to ask what's going on. If they don't know, hey, that's a good sign right there. That's never been cleaned.
All right. So we know that we need to vacuum 2 to 3 times a week. We need to get our air ducts cleaned every 6 years. If we need to monitor the indoor humidity, and if we do have indoor humidity problems, we need to install devices that will help kill off the mold inside. What about air filters? So most people have an air filter in their home or office. How often do we need to change the air filters?
It depends what type of air filter you have. You can have certain air filters you can change every 3 months, or you can have certain air filters that you can change twice a year. You got HEPA filters, you got metallic filters, all different type of filters for certain people's needs. Some are more expensive than others, but it's nothing more important than an air purification system. And I say that once again because a filter is guaranteed not going to catch everything. People say, it's going to catch this amount of dust and debris, but it's the way the material of the filter, it's not going to happen. It's not guaranteed. It helps out. It's like putting a Band-Aid on the situation, but it's not actually fixing the problem.
Okay, yeah, so this is all very important for our health and for the health of our loved ones. And so what are some other things that we can do to improve the air quality in our home? What about opening the windows and having fresh air exchange?
That can be good to a certain extent. You don't want to leave the door open too much, because at the same time you're letting stuff inside the system, and it's going to work your system even harder. And I also say another thing that's really important: watch what type of chemicals you use to clean inside your house, what you clean your kitchen with, what you mop your floors with, what you clean your bathroom with, because all that stuff is getting put right back inside the air. Watch what you spray inside your home, what type of fragrances, what type of candles that you use, because that can cause, heavy smoke inside your unit. You light a lot of candles and incense. Those type of things you need to be aware of, because you got to also know the smoke and the chemicals, they have to go somewhere, and they're going inside your unit, and it's coming right back out, and it's going right back inside your system when you're breathing it in.
Right. And so how do we know that we're using good organic cleaning products?
You check for the labels. You just check for the labels. It's 2018. A lot of people are getting aware of this now, so they're starting to be aware of the chemicals that they're using. So, like I said, we use green and organic solutions to go ahead when we clean the air ducts, because we know how important it is. We got to watch what we put inside the unit, because people are real sensitive to that. So it's nothing to look at the label, but they do have cleaning products out there that don't use any of that.
Right. So we want to use chemical-free cleaning products as much as possible. Yes. Now it's certain. So right now it's the winter time. So I'm really reluctant to open the windows when it's really cold. But how often do you recommend that people open the windows and allow that air, the fresh air, to circulate?
You can get some fresh air. I say no more than 30 minutes to an hour. You don't want to leave it open too long. But if you just want to have some fresh air, like you said, if it's during the summertime, that's a little bit different. But if it's cold outside, maybe like 45 minutes, an hour, just to let it air out, get some fresh air inside the system. But as long as your system is being maintenance, you're good. So I'll say 45 minutes to an hour just to get some fresh air inside the home.
And how often should we open the windows for 45 minutes an hour to get the fresh air?
If it depends, like I said, on how long you're home. If you're home most of the day, maybe every few hours, maybe once or twice a day. But if you're not home as often, you don't have to leave the windows open all day. But it depends how long you're home throughout the day.
And what about people who are living in apartments who don't have complete control? What do they need to do?
You need to go, because for the most part, I have this issue a lot with a lot of my clients who live in apartments. Most apartment buildings never had their air ducts clean. I say 90% of the houses, apartments I go to, they have mold inside the unit. They can't breathe. You know, the building's been there for years. It's never been cleaned. You got previous owners that lived there before you. You don't know what they had going on, what type of issues that they had inside their fence. But you need to ask your landlord, or even that before you even sign the lease, to get that done. Because I noticed with apartments, they have a real issue with getting that done. They don't feel as though it's important. You know, it costs money, but you know, your health is way more important. And that definitely needs to get done. You need to ask those type of questions when you move inside the apartment, because I noticed a lot of apartment builders trying to put that off like it's not that serious, but it is. They don't say that because they're not living there every day. So, you know, you have to ask those type of questions before you move in to a residence like that. And that's anywhere.
So Lee Freeman, air quality specialist with twofreshaq.com. You're doing very important work. And even though you're not a doctor or a holistic healer, you're making significant differences in people's health. So every day of your life, you go to work, you help people. So Lee Freeman, any final thoughts for our audience?
Yes, just like I know everybody got something out of this, and you know, this is real important, you guys. Definitely check this out and get on top of it. You can call your local air duct cleaning company, get your air quality tested, and all this type of work done, because it's necessary and it's important. Save the time, start it now instead of waiting later until it gets worse. Start fixing it now. Don't wait on it.
Right. Don't wait till you've got allergies, asthma, problems, or a heart attack. Right?
Oh yeah, or a heart attack, or rush to the hospital. You don't want to have those type of problems. You don't want to wait till it's too late. So solve the problem now while you still can.
You've been listening to Lee Freeman, certified licensed HVAC technician and air quality specialist. Find out more about Lee Freeman and his wonderful work at twofreshaq.com. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You've been listening to The Natural Healing Show, and you can find out more about me at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can be healthy naturally. And remember, if you have been suffering from chronic health problems, you need to ask yourself, how's my air quality? What do I need to do to clean up my home? Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Have a good one, guys.